The courtroom smelled of old wood and bitter regret, polished mahogany that had absorbed decades of broken promises, mingled with the sharp scent of ink still drying on documents that would sever my life in two. I stood before the elevated bench, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles had gone white, feeling the weight of 200 eyes burning into my back. The pack had come to witness this, of course. A royal divorce was spectacle enough, but when the Luna herself was being cast aside, it became the kind of entertainment they'd whisper about for generations. I could hear them even now, their voices a low hum of speculation and judgment that vibrated through the ceremonial hall. The chandeliers overhead cast fractured light across the marble floors, and I focused on those broken patterns rather than look up at him. At Dominic, the Alpha King, my husband of 3 years who now sat upon his throne, with the same expression he'd worn the day he told me our bond meant nothing to him. The officiator's voice droned on, reading the terms I'd already memorized. Irreconcilable differences. Failure to produce an heir. The clinical language couldn't mask what everyone already knew. I wasn't enough. Not strong enough, not wolf enough, not worthy enough to stand beside the most powerful alpha in the Northern Territories. My wolf had always been weak, a pale shadow compared to the magnificent beasts that prowled these halls. Where others shifted with grace and power, I struggled, my transformations painful and incomplete. I was 24 years old, and I was about to become the first Luna in our kingdom's history to be divorced. Do you accept these terms? The officiator's question cut through my spiraling thoughts. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, a sharp pain lanced through my abdomen, subtle enough that no one else would notice, but unmistakable to me. It had been happening for weeks now, these small reminders of the secret I carried beneath the silk of my ceremonial dress. 3 months along, according to the doctor I'd visited in secret in a human town 50 miles away. 3 months of knowing I carried the heir everyone claimed I couldn't give them. And I would never tell him. The decision had crystallized the night I'd overheard Dominic talking with his beta, Cole, in the study. She's a liability, nothing more. The pack needs strength, and she gives us weakness, even if she could give me a child. What kind of wolf would it be with her blood diluting the royal line? Those words had hollowed me out, scraped away whatever foolish hope I'd still been clinging to, so I'd made my choice. I would leave with my dignity, or what remained of it, and I would raise this child far away from a father who would see them as another disappointment, another weakness to be hidden or managed. I accept, I said, and my voice didn't shake. Small victories. The officiator nodded and turned to Dominic. And you? Alpha King? Dominic rose from his throne, his tall frame commanding even in this moment of ending. His dark hair was pulled back from a face that might have been carved from stone for all the emotion it showed. Those ice-blue eyes that had once looked at me with something resembling warmth now held nothing but cool dismissal. He was 32, in his prime, and already there were rumors about who would replace me. Stronger she-wolves, better bloodlines, women who could give him the dynasty he craved. I accept, he said, and the finality in his voice felt like a door slamming shut on everything I'd tried to build here. The officiator raised his hands. Then, by the authority vested in me by pack law and the ancient codes, I declare this union dissolved. May you both find the paths meant for you. It was done. Just like that. 3 years of marriage, of trying, of slowly watching someone you loved turn into a stranger, erased with a few words and some signatures. The crowd erupted into whispers, and I felt rather than saw several she-wolves shift forward with predatory interest, already circling the newly available king. I was supposed to leave through the side entrance, a concession to spare me the walk of shame through the main hall. But as I turned to go, Dominic's voice stopped me. Elena. My name on his lips still had power, even now. I hated myself for it. I turned back, meeting his gaze across the space that separated us. A space that had been growing for months, maybe years. You'll be given the cottage on the eastern border, he said, his tone businesslike. And a monthly stipend. It's more than generous. Generous. As if money could compensate for being thrown away. As if I wanted anything from him at all. I don't want the cottage, I replied softly, or the stipend. I'm leaving the territory entirely. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe? Or was that concern? But it vanished so quickly I might have imagined it. That's not wise. A lone wolf. I'm not a lone wolf, I interrupted, lifting my chin. I'm just no longer your wolf. There's a difference. The crowd had gone silent now, straining to hear this unexpected exchange. Cole stepped forward from his position beside the throne, his hazel eyes worried. He'd always been kind to me, one of the few who had. Elena, the Alpha King is right. It's dangerous out there for someone with... He stopped himself, but we all knew what he meant to say. Someone with your weakness. I'll manage, I said firmly. I let my gaze sweep the crowd one last time, taking in the familiar faces, some pitying, some gleeful, most simply curious. Then I looked back at Dominic. I release you from any obligation to me. Consider yourself free in every sense of the word. I placed my hand over my lower abdomen for just a moment, a gesture that could have meant anything. Could have been nothing. His eyes tracked the movement, but he said nothing. Then I turned and walked toward the side entrance with my head high, even as everything inside me screamed to run. The hallway beyond was mercifully empty, my footsteps echoing off stone walls covered in tapestries depicting the pack's glorious history. History I'd never truly been part of. Not really. I'd been a footnote, a failed experiment, a cautionary tale about marrying for love instead of strategy. The November air bit at my skin as I stepped outside, but I welcomed the cold. It cleared my head, sharpened my focus. I had a bag packed in my old chambers, just the essentials. I'd already arranged everything. A small apartment in a human city 2 states away, a job waiting tables at a diner, a new identity that had nothing to do with wolves or packs or bloodlines. I was halfway across the courtyard when I heard footsteps behind me. Elena, wait. Cole. Of course. He'd always been the one to try to smooth things over, to make the unbearable somewhat bearable. I stopped but didn't turn around. I'm not changing my mind. I know. He came around to face me, his expression pained. I'm sorry. For all of it. You deserved better than what happened here. The kindness in his voice nearly broke me. But I'd used up all my tears weeks ago. Thank you, I managed. Take care of him, Cole. He's going to need people he can trust. What about you? Cole asked quietly. Who's going to take care of you? I smiled then, a real smile for the first time in months, and placed my hand briefly on my still flat stomach. I'll figure it out. I always do. Cole's eyes widened as understanding dawned, but before he could say anything, I turned and walked away. Let him wonder. Let him keep my secret or tell it. Either way, I'd be long gone before it mattered. I retrieved my bag and left through the back gates just as the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of amber and blood. I didn't look back at the castle, at the life I was leaving. Looking back had never done me any good. The bus station was a 40-minute walk, enough time for my mind to race through everything I was giving up and everything I might be gaining. A child. My child. Someone I could love without conditions, without political calculations, without wondering if I'd ever be enough. The bus was nearly empty when I boarded. Just an elderly couple near the front and a young man sleeping in the back. I chose a seat in the middle, pressed my forehead against the cool window, and watched the Packlands disappear into the darkness behind me. I didn't know then that 9 months later, a message would find its way back to Dominic. Didn't know that the careful life I was building would come crashing down when the past finally caught up with me. Didn't know that the man who'd thrown me away would move heaven and earth to find me once he knew the truth. All I knew, sitting on that bus with my hand protective over my secret, was that I'd survived the ending of one story, and somehow, some way, I'd survived the beginning of the next, even if I had to do it alone. The apartment smelled like cheap coffee and hope, or maybe that was just the way I'd learned to reframe desperation. 6 months had passed since I'd stepped off that bus in Millbrook, a mid-sized city where nobody knew what an Alpha King was, and nobody cared. Here, I was just Elena Morrison, 24-year-old waitress with a growing belly and a tendency to avoid questions about the father. I stood at the window of my third-floor walk-up, watching March rain streak the glass, one hand absently rubbing the pronounced curve beneath my oversized sweater. 7 months pregnant now, and the baby had started kicking in earnest, strong, insistent movements that made me gasp and laugh in equal measure. My daughter. I knew it somehow, felt it in my bones. The doctor had offered to tell me at the last ultrasound, but I'd already known. "You're going to be so loved," I whispered to my belly. "So incredibly loved." The diner where I worked had been understanding about my condition, more understanding than I'd expected. Certainly more than the pack ever would have been. Margie, the owner, was a sturdy woman in her 60s who asked no questions and made sure I never lifted anything too heavy. The regulars had started leaving bigger tips when they noticed my pregnancy. Their quiet kindness a balm I hadn't known I needed. I'd made a life here. Small? Yes. Quiet. But mine. My phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. The cheap prepaid cell I'd bought when I arrived, with only 3 contacts saved. My landlord, the diner, and Dr. Sarah Chen, the obstetrician who'd been guiding me through this pregnancy with patience and humor. I picked it up, expecting an appointment reminder. Instead, it was a text from a number I didn't recognize. "Elena, we need to talk. It's important. Cole." My heart seized. The phone nearly slipped from my suddenly nerveless fingers. No. I'd been so careful. I'd covered my tracks, used cash for everything those first few months, avoided anything that could be traced back to me. How had he found me? And more importantly, why now? Another text came through before I could decide whether to respond or throw the phone out the window. "Please, I'm not here on his orders. You're in danger." Danger. The word sent ice through my veins. I moved away from the window instinctively, my hand protective over my belly. Whatever danger Cole was talking about, it couldn't reach me here. I was human to the human world, invisible to the pack. I'd made sure of it. But even as I tried to convince myself, I felt my wolf stir. That weak, pale creature that had been dormant for months, suddenly alert. She'd been quiet since I left, perhaps sensing my need to blend in, to disappear. Now she paced inside me, anxious. A knock at the door made me jump. I froze, staring at the scarred wood as if I could see through it. The knock came again, softer this time, almost apologetic. "Elena, it's me, Cole. I can hear your heartbeat. I know you're there. Please, just 5 minutes." Hearing his voice, real and close, was somehow worse than the texts. It meant he was really here, that the wall I'd built between my old life and new life had just developed a crack I could refuse to answer. I could call the police, though what would I tell them? That my ex-husband's best friend was bothering me? That wouldn't even make sense to human authorities. But Cole had said I was in danger. And despite everything, despite the divorce and the abandonment and the months of silence, I knew Cole. He'd never been cruel. If he said it was important, he meant it. I opened the door. Cole stood in the dim hallway, looking travel-worn and worried. He'd always been more approachable than Dominic, with softer features and eyes that actually reflected what he was feeling. Those eyes widened now as they dropped to my very pregnant belly. "Jesus, Elena," he breathed. "You already knew," I said quietly. "That day in the courtyard. I suspected. But seeing it..." He shook his head, seeming to gather himself. "Can I come in? Please. I swear I'm alone, and I haven't told anyone where you are." Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. Cole entered, and I caught his scent. Pine and earth. Pack. Home. My wolf whined softly, missing what we'd left behind even as I reminded her why we'd left. He remained standing just inside the door, giving me space. His gaze kept returning to my belly, something like wonder mixed with concern crossing his features. "How did you find me?" I asked, closing the door but staying near it, maintaining my escape route. "It wasn't easy. You covered your tracks well. But Elena, you used your real first name at the diner. One of our scouts was passing through last week, stopped for coffee, heard Margie call you Elena. She noted the resemblance to our former Luna, and..." He spread his hands. "I've been tracking every Elena within 500 miles for months. When the description matched, blonde hair, blue eyes, petite build, I had to check." "You've been looking for months?" My voice came out sharper than intended. "Why?" Cole's expression darkened. "Because things have gone to hell since you left. The pack is fracturing. There have been 3 challenges to Dominic's authority in 6 months. Unheard of for an Alpha King. And there's talk that the neighboring territories sense weakness, that they're considering..." He trailed off. But I understood. War. They were considering war. That's not my problem anymore, I said, even as guilt twisted in my chest. I was divorced, remember? Cast aside. Why would I care what happens to... There's more. Cole cut me off, his voice urgent. 2 weeks ago, we discovered something. Someone's been spreading rumors through the territories, claiming that Dominic divorced you because you were barren by curse. That any female who bears his child will die in childbirth. I stared at him. That's insane. It's effective. No she-wolf will consider bonding with him now. They're terrified. And the pack needs stability, needs the promise of an heir. Cole took a careful step forward. Elena, when is your due date? That's none of your concern. It is if that child is the heir to the Northern Territories. His voice was gentle but firm. Elena, look at me. Is that Dominic's child? I wanted to lie. The words were right there, ready to protect my daughter from a world that had already proven how cruel it could be. But Cole had always been honest with me, had always treated me with respect, even when others didn't. Yes, I whispered. But he doesn't know, and I want it to stay that way. You can't. I can, and I will. My voice hardened. He made his feelings clear, Cole. He said my blood would dilute the royal line. What do you think he'd say about a child he doesn't even know exists? A child conceived with someone he considered a weakness? He'd move mountains to protect that child, Cole said quietly. Whatever Dominic felt or didn't feel about your marriage, he takes his duty to the bloodline seriously. An heir, Elena, a legitimate heir. It changes everything. It changes nothing. I wrapped my arms around my belly protectively. My daughter will grow up loved and safe, away from pack politics and challenges and people who see her as nothing but a tool for power. Cole's expression shifted to something like pain. A daughter, he murmured. Elena, you have to understand the position this puts the pack in. Without an heir, without stability, I don't have to understand anything. I left that world. I'm building a different life now. A life where you work yourself to exhaustion in a diner. Cole gestured around the small apartment with its secondhand furniture and peeling wallpaper. Where you're alone, with no pack to protect you, no support system. What happens when she's born and your wolf becomes even more protective? You think you can hide what you are forever? His words struck too close to fears I'd been pushing down for months. The truth was, I didn't know how I'd manage once the baby came. I'd been taking it day by day, saving every penny I could. But the reality of being a single mother with no family, no pack, no safety net, it terrified me more than I wanted to admit. I'll figure it out, I said, lifting my chin. I always do. Cole studied me for a long moment, and I saw the exact second he decided to change tactics. The rogues have been more active lately, he said quietly. The ones who were exiled from various packs. They're forming groups, becoming bolder. Last month, they attacked a human town 50 miles from our borders. 12 people died before we could intervene. My blood went cold. Cole. I'm not trying to scare you. I'm trying to make you see reality. You're vulnerable here, Elena. You and your daughter both. And once she's born, once she starts showing wolf traits, and she will because Dominic's bloodline is strong, you won't be able to hide anymore. The rogues can smell pack wolves, especially royal blood. They'll find you eventually. I sank onto the worn couch, my legs suddenly unsteady. My hand moved over my belly, feeling my daughter kick as if sensing my distress. What do you want from me? Come back. Not to the pack house if you don't want to. But come back to the territory where we can protect you. Where I can protect you. Cole crouched in front of me, his expression earnest. You don't have to tell Dominic about the baby. Not yet. Not until you're ready. But let us keep you safe. And if I refuse, his jaw tightened, then I stay here. I'll watch over you myself, even if you hate me for it, because I failed you once, Elena. I saw what was happening to your marriage, saw how Dominic was pulling away and how much it was destroying you, and I didn't do enough to stop it. I won't fail you, or that child. Again, the sincerity in his voice nearly undid me. I'd been so alone for so long, carrying this burden by myself, terrified and pretending I wasn't. The idea of having someone watch my back, of not being quite so alone, it was tempting in a way that scared me almost as much as the danger he was describing. I need time to think, I said finally. Cole nodded, and stood. "I'm staying at the motel on 5th Street. Room 23. Call me when you decide." "But Elena..." He paused at the door. "Don't take too long. The baby's coming soon, and we're running out of time." After he left, I sat in the growing darkness, my hand still on my belly, feeling my daughter move. She was strong, this child. Stronger than my wolf had ever been. I could feel it in her kicks, in the way my body had carried her with relatively few complications despite my fears. Maybe Cole was right. Maybe I was being selfish, thinking I could do this alone. But the thought of going back, of facing Dominic, of watching him dismiss our daughter the way he'd dismissed me, I didn't know if I was strong enough for that. My daughter kicked again, harder this time, right beneath my palm. "What should I do?" I whispered to her. "What's best for you?" She didn't answer, of course. But as I sat there in my small apartment, feeling the weight of decisions I wasn't ready to make, I realized that for the first time in months, I wasn't just thinking about survival, I was thinking about what came next. And that terrified me more than anything else. The diner's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in that particular shade of artificial brightness that made the world feel slightly unreal. I was wiping down table 6 for the 3rd time, my back aching and my feet swollen, when Margie appeared beside me with a cup of chamomile tea and a knowing look. "Sit," she ordered, pulling out a chair. "You've been on your feet for 5 hours straight." "I'm fine, Elena." Her tone left no room for argument. "Sit down before you fall down. That baby doesn't need you being stubborn." I sank into the chair gratefully, accepting the tea. It had been 3 days since Cole's visit. 3 days of sleepless nights and circular thoughts that led nowhere. I hadn't called him. Hadn't decided anything. I was in limbo, waiting for... What? A sign? Divine intervention? Boy troubles? Margie asked, settling into the chair across from me with her own coffee. I nearly laughed. Something like that. The father? I'd never told her about the father, had deflected every gentle question with vague answers about it being complicated, about him being out of the picture. But there was something about Margie, maybe her steady presence, maybe the mother-shaped hole in my life that she'd been quietly filling. That made me want to be honest. "My ex-husband," I admitted quietly. "His friend found me. Wants me to come back." Margie's eyebrows rose, but she didn't interrupt. "I left because the marriage was toxic. Because he made it clear I wasn't enough. Would never be enough. I found out I was pregnant after we'd already separated, after the divorce was finalized. And I chose not to tell him because I couldn't bear the thought of him rejecting our child the way he rejected me. But now the friend says you're in danger staying here alone," Margie finished, reading between the lines with the perception that came from decades of watching human nature play out across diner tables, something like that. "Are you? In danger?" I thought about the rogues Cole had mentioned, about the wolf growing inside me who would need protection I might not be able to provide. Maybe. Probably. I don't know. Margie was quiet for a moment, sipping her coffee. Then, "My daughter died when she was 26. Cancer. She had a little girl, barely 3 years old. Her ex-husband, my granddaughter's father, he was a piece of work. Neglectful, selfish, couldn't be bothered. But when my daughter got sick, when she knew she was dying, you know what she did." I shook my head, my throat tight. She swallowed her pride and called him, made arrangements for him to take custody, because as much as she hated him, as much as he'd failed her, she knew her daughter needed more than what she could give from a hospital bed. She chose her child's safety over her own pain. Margie's eyes were bright with old grief. "I'm not saying go back to a man who hurt you. I'm saying that sometimes loving someone means making choices that cost us everything." Before I could respond, the diner door chimed. I looked up and felt my world tilt sideways. Dominic stood in the doorway. He looked different than I remembered. Thinner, with shadows under those ice-blue eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. His dark hair was slightly longer, less carefully maintained. He wore jeans and a leather jacket instead of his usual formal attire. But there was no mistaking the power in the way he carried himself, the authority that made even the human patrons glance his way nervously without understanding why. Our eyes met across the diner, and I watched his gaze drop to my belly. 8 months pregnant now, impossible to hide or dismiss. I saw the exact moment understanding hit him. Saw his face go white, then flush, then blank with the kind of shock that steals words and breath and reason. "Oh, hell," Margie muttered beside me. Dominic crossed the diner in 4 long strides, ignoring the other customers. His focus narrowed to me with an intensity that made my wolf finally, wake up fully. She'd been drowsy for months, subdued. Now she surged forward, recognizing her mate, wanting him despite everything my human side knew was true. "Elena." My name came out rough, barely above a whisper. "Tell me that's not—" "You need to leave." I stood, putting the table between us, one hand protectively over my belly. My daughter was kicking frantically, responding to the presence of her father even though she'd never known him. "You have no right to be here." "No right?" His voice rose, drawing startled looks from the other diners. "That's my child, Elena. How could you? How could you keep this from me? The same way you kept your contempt from me for 3 years. I shot back, my own anger rising to meet his. "The same way you stood in that courtroom and divorced me without a second thought. You made your choice, Dominic. I made mine. I didn't know you were pregnant. You didn't care enough to find out." The words tore out of me, raw and painful. "You wanted me gone. You got your wish. You don't get to show up now and pretend you have some claim. She's my daughter." The words echoed through the suddenly silent diner. Dominic's chest was heaving, his control fraying in a way I'd never seen. "I can feel it, Elena. I can feel her. She's mine, and you kept her from me." "All right, that's enough." Margie stood, all 5'2" of her stepping between us like she could stop an alpha king through sheer force of will. "I don't know what kind of drama you people have going on, but this is my establishment, and you're upsetting my customers. And more importantly, you're upsetting my girl. So either you calm down and have this conversation like civilized adults, or you take it outside. Your choice." Dominic looked at Margie like he'd never been spoken to that way in his life, which he probably hadn't. For a moment I thought he might argue, might let his authority as Alpha King override basic human courtesy, but something in Margie's unflinching stare must have reached him, because he took a step back, his jaw working. "Outside," he said tightly, his eyes on me. "Please. Elena, please. Give me 5 minutes." Every instinct screamed at me to refuse, to maintain the distance I'd fought so hard to create. But I could feel my daughter moving inside me, could feel the pull of the bond that I'd tried to ignore for 8 months. And I knew that running would only postpone the inevitable. 5 minutes, I agreed. "Then you leave and don't come back." I grabbed my coat and followed him out into the April evening. The air was cool and damp, carrying the promise of rain. We walked to the parking lot behind the diner, where his rental car sat alone under a flickering streetlight. Dominic turned to face me, and in the dim light, I could see how much the past months had changed him. The arrogance I remembered had been replaced by something rawer, more vulnerable. He looked at my belly like he was seeing a miracle and a tragedy wrapped into one impossible package. "When?" he asked, his voice rough. "When is she due?" 4 weeks, maybe less." "And you weren't going to tell me?" It wasn't a question. "No." I lifted my chin, refusing to apologize. "I wasn't." "Why?" The word broke on something that sounded dangerously close to pain. "Elena, why would you keep my child from me? Because you didn't want me." The truth burst out of me, sharp and cutting. "You made that abundantly clear, Dominic. I was a weakness, a liability. My blood would dilute the royal line, remember? You said that. I heard you say that to Cole, so tell me, why would I bring a child into a world where her own father would see her as a disappointment before she even took her first breath?" Dominic flinched like I'd struck him. "I never said—" "You did. You said exactly that. And even if you hadn't, your actions said it loud enough. You pulled away from me for a year before the divorce. Stopped touching me, stopped talking to me, stopped looking at me like I was anything more than an obligation you couldn't wait to be free of. So forgive me for assuming you'd feel the same way about a child we made together. That's not—" He ran his hands through his hair, frustration and something else, regret, maybe, warring across his features. "Elena, I was wrong. About so many things. I was under pressure from the council, from the pack, from everyone saying I needed a stronger Luna. And instead of fighting for you, instead of telling them all to go to hell, I let them convince me they were right. I let them convince me that what we had wasn't enough. And now? I asked, my voice cold despite the tears threatening behind my eyes. Now that there's an heir in the picture, suddenly I'm worth fighting for? Now I know what I lost, he said quietly. Cole told me you'd gone, just gone, completely off the radar, and I told myself it was for the best, that you'd be happier away from pack politics. But Elena, I haven't had a single peaceful night since you left. The pack is falling apart. I'm falling apart. And then Cole came back 2 days ago and told me about the baby, told me where you were, and wait. I held up a hand, my mind catching on something. 2 days ago? Cole said he wouldn't tell you. He promised. He kept that promise for as long as he could. But things have escalated. The neighboring territories are mobilizing. There's going to be a war, Elena, and soon. The rogues attacked another human settlement 3 days ago, closer to our borders this time. They're testing our defenses, looking for weakness. And they know about you. My blood turned to ice. How? Someone in the pack leaked information. We don't know who yet. But the rogues know the former Luna is pregnant and unprotected. They know where you are. Or they will soon. Cole couldn't keep your location secret anymore. Not if it meant leaving you and our daughter exposed. Our daughter. The casual possessive in his voice made something in my chest ache. So you came to what? Take us back by force? Claim your heir and put us under guard? I came to beg. The words were so unexpected, coming from someone who'd never begged for anything in his life, that I nearly didn't process them. I came to ask you, to plead with you, to let me protect you both, not as Alpha King to former Luna, as a father who just found out he has a daughter, and as a man who realized too late that he destroyed the best thing that ever happened to him. I stared at him, searching for the trap, the manipulation, the political calculation, but all I saw was raw honesty and a fear that matched my own. I don't trust you, I whispered. I can't. I know. I don't deserve your trust. But Elena, our daughter, she deserves to be safe. She deserves to grow up knowing both her parents, knowing her heritage, knowing the pack that will one day be hers to lead. I'm not asking you to forgive me, or to come back as my Luna. I'm asking you to let me keep you both alive. A drop of rain hit my face, then another. Within seconds it was pouring, cold spring rain that soaked through my coat in moments. Dominic moved instinctively to shield me, his body between me and the worst of the storm. Even now, even after everything, his protective instinct was automatic. My daughter kicked hard, as if voicing her own opinion on the matter. I pressed my hand to where I could feel her, this strong little life who deserved so much more than the fear and uncertainty I'd been living with. If I agree, I said slowly, it's on my terms. I'm not coming back as your Luna. I'm not rejoining the pack. I'm coming back as a mother protecting her child. Nothing more. Agreed. And you don't get to make decisions about our daughter without me. Not her name, not her upbringing, not her future. We do this together, as parents, or we don't do it at all. Agreed. His voice was thick with something I was afraid to name. Elena, I swear to you, I will spend the rest of my life proving that I can be the father she deserves. That I can be— Don't, I interrupted. Don't make promises about us. There is no us anymore. There's just two people trying to do right by their child. The light in his eyes dimmed, but he nodded. I understand. When do we leave? Tomorrow. I have security waiting. Cole and 3 other trusted wolves will drive you back to the territory under guard. You'll have your own residence, separate from the pack house. Privacy, independence, everything you need for the baby. I looked back at the diner, at the warm light spilling out into the rainy darkness. I'd been happy here, in my small way. I'd been safe. But Margie's words echoed in my mind. Sometimes loving someone means making choices that cost us everything. Okay, I said finally. We'll go tomorrow. Dominic's relief was palpable. Thank you, Elena, thank you. I turned to go back inside, but his hand caught my wrist gently. I looked back at him, at this man who'd been my husband, my heartbreak, the father of my child. For what it's worth, he said softly, I'm sorry. For all of it. I know that doesn't change anything, but I need you to know. I'm sorry. I pulled my wrist free and walked back into the diner without responding. Some apologies come too late to matter. Some wounds cut too deep to heal with words. But as I dried off in the bathroom and felt my daughter settling down inside me, I realized something had shifted. The future that had seemed impossible just hours ago now had a shape, a direction. Whether that direction led toward healing or more heartbreak, only time would tell. The cottage sat on the edge of the eastern forest, far enough from the pack house to feel like exile, but close enough that I could see the main compound's lights through the trees at night. It was larger than my apartment had been, with 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that actually had counter space, and windows that looked out onto wildflower meadows that would be beautiful once spring fully arrived. I'd been back in the territory for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of settling into this strange new reality where I was neither Luna nor outsider, where pack members I'd once known would nod politely, but keep their distance, uncertain of my status. 3 weeks of Dominic appearing every morning with offerings. Fresh bread from the pack kitchen, books he thought I might like, hand-carved toys for a daughter who hadn't been born yet. 3 weeks of my heart warring with my head every time I saw him. I was arranging baby clothes in the nursery dresser, soft yellows and greens, nothing gendered because I'd kept the sex a secret from everyone but Cole, when a sharp pain radiated across my lower back. I paused, breathing through it, one hand pressed to my spine. False contractions. I'd been having them for days, my body preparing for what was coming. Any day now, Dr. Winters had said during my last checkup. The pack's physician was a stern woman in her 50s who'd examined me with professional detachment and declared both me and the baby healthy despite my months away from proper prenatal care. She hadn't commented on the situation, hadn't asked questions, but I'd seen the curiosity in her eyes, the unspoken questions about why the former Luna had hidden her pregnancy. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. I already knew who it would be. Dominic had a particular rhythm to his knocking, somehow both authoritative and tentative. I opened the door to find him holding a bassinet, beautifully crafted from dark wood, with intricate carvings of wolves and moons along the sides. "I made it," he said almost shyly. "I remembered you mentioned needing one." I stared at the bassinet, at the careful detail work that must have taken hours, at the visible proof that he'd been thinking about our daughter, planning for her. Something in my chest cracked dangerously. "It's beautiful," I managed. "Thank you." He brought it inside, setting it carefully near the window where morning light would stream in. His movements were cautious, like he was afraid of overstepping, of assuming too much. It was such a stark contrast to the commanding Alpha King who'd ruled without question that I barely recognized him. "Are you feeling all right?" he asked, noticing the way I was holding my back. "Should I call Dr. Winters? I'm fine. Just practice contractions." His expression shifted to something between panic and wonder. "Practice, right. That's normal?" Despite everything, I almost smiled at his obvious nervousness. "Yes, Dominic, it's normal. Women have been having babies for millennia. We generally survive the process." "Right. Of course." He rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture of uncertainty I'd never seen from him before. I want to be prepared. I've been reading the books you gave Cole to pass along, about labor and delivery and what to expect. I had given Cole several pregnancy books I'd collected, mainly so Dominic would stop asking me terrified questions every time he visited. The image of the Alpha King frantically reading what to expect when you're expecting was almost enough to make me laugh. The books are helping? Terrifying me, mostly. Did you know there are approximately 47 things that can go wrong during delivery? And that's just in the first stage of... Dominic. I cut him off gently. Stop reading the medical complications chapter. But what if nothing? Dr. Winters says we're both healthy. The pregnancy has been textbook normal despite everything. Our daughter is strong. I'm strong. We'll be fine. You are strong, he said quietly, his eyes intense on mine. Stronger than I ever gave you credit for. Elena, you survived months alone, working yourself to exhaustion, carrying our child without support or pack. I don't think I fully understood what that meant until now, what you endured because of my mistakes. I looked away, uncomfortable with the raw emotion in his voice. I did what I had to do. You did what I should have made unnecessary. He took a step closer, then stopped himself, maintaining the careful distance we'd established. I've been thinking about what you said. About hearing me tell Cole your blood would dilute the royal line. Don't. I didn't want to revisit that pain, that memory of feeling worthless. I need to say this. Please. He waited until I met his eyes again. I was repeating what the council had been drilling into me for months. They were convinced we needed a stronger Luna, someone with warrior blood or alpha lineage. And I was so focused on being what everyone expected, the perfect king, the strategic leader, that I lost sight of what actually mattered. You mattered, Elena. Our bond mattered, and I destroyed it because I was too much of a coward to fight for it. Why now? The question came out harsh. Why do you care now, when you didn't care then? I always cared. I was just too stupid to realize how much until you were gone. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident. The pack started falling apart almost immediately. Challenges to my authority, unrest in the outer territories. Pack members questioning my judgment. Cole finally made me see that it wasn't your weakness that was the problem. It was mine. My inability to stand by my choices, to protect what was mine. The pack sensed that weakness, and they responded accordingly. So you want me back to stabilize your rule? The old hurt crept back in, sharp and familiar. No. God, no, Elena. I want you back because every morning I wake up, and the first thought I have is of you, because I dream about you every night. And in those dreams, we're still together, still whole, because I look at that bassinet I made and I think about our daughter sleeping in it. And I can't breathe for how much I want that. Want us to be a family. Want to do this together. Want to deserve the second chance you're giving me just by being here. The intensity in his voice made my wolf surge forward, desperate to close the distance between us, to accept what he was offering. But I held firm, remembering all the nights I'd cried alone, all the moments I'd doubted myself because of his rejection. You hurt me, I said simply. You hurt me in ways I'm still trying to heal from. And I won't risk our daughter growing up watching her father reject her mother. She deserves better than that. She does. You both do. Dominic's voice was rough. I'm not asking you to forget what I did. I'm not even asking you to forgive me, not yet. I'm just asking you to let me prove that I can be better, that I can be the mate you deserved from the beginning. Before I could respond, another pain lanced through my back. Stronger this time, wrapping around to my abdomen. I gasped, gripping the dresser for support. Dominic was beside me instantly, his hands steadying me. Elena? What's wrong? Nothing's wrong, I managed, breathing through the contraction. I think this might be it. Real labor, not practice. His face went pale. Now? But it's too early. You're not due for another week, and Dr. Winters said first babies usually come late, and... Dominic, I squeezed his hand, partly for support and partly to ground his rising panic. Babies come when they're ready. Call Dr. Winters, and Cole, and whoever else needs to know. Our daughter has decided she's done waiting. The next hours blurred together in waves of pain and pressure, and Dominic's constant presence. Doctor. Winters arrived within 20 minutes, converting my bedroom into a makeshift delivery room with an efficiency that suggested she'd done this countless times. Cole came too, stationing himself outside with 3 other wolves, creating a security perimeter that would have been comforting if I'd had the mental space to care about anything beyond the labor consuming me. Dominic refused to leave my side. He held my hand through contractions, let me squeeze until I must have been bruising him, offered ice chips and encouragement and apologies that I was too focused on breathing to process. His fear was palpable. I could feel it through the bond that had never fully broken despite the divorce. But he channeled it into being exactly what I needed. Steady, present, unshakable. You're doing amazingly, he murmured during a brief respite between contractions, brushing sweat-dampened hair from my forehead. So strong, Elena. So incredibly strong. Tell that to my body, I gasped. Because right now it feels like I'm being torn in half. You're at 8 centimeters, Dr. Winters announced from her position at the foot of the bed. Almost there. Another hour. Maybe less. Another hour felt like an eternity, and an instant all at once. The pain crescendoed until I couldn't think past it, couldn't focus on anything except the primal need to push, to bring my daughter into the world. Dominic's voice was an anchor, talking me through each contraction, reminding me to breathe, telling me I could do this. I can see her head, Dr. Winters said, her professional calm cracking slightly with excitement. One more big push, Elena. You're almost there. I bore down with everything I had, feeling a pressure and stretch that seemed impossible. And then, a cry, small and furious and utterly perfect. It's a girl, Dr. Winters announced unnecessarily, lifting a squirming, pink-faced infant covered in vernix and possibility. A beautiful, healthy girl. She placed our daughter on my chest, and the world narrowed to this tiny being, all scrunched face and waving fists, and an outraged wail that said she was very much displeased with her sudden eviction from the womb. I cupped her head with one hand, feeling the impossible softness of her, the weight of her, the reality of her. "Hi," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Hi, baby girl. I'm your mama. I've been waiting so long to meet you." Beside me, Dominic made a sound that might have been a sob. His hand trembled as he reached out, touching our daughter's tiny fingers with a reverence that broke something open inside me. "She's perfect," he breathed. "Elena, she's absolutely perfect." Our daughter's eyes opened, just slits, unfocused and cloudy, but definitely blue. She looked between us as if taking measure of the people who'd brought her into existence, then yawned hugely and settled against my chest, apparently deciding we'd pass muster. "What's her name?" Dr. Winters asked as she worked to deliver the placenta and clean up. "Have you decided?" I looked at Dominic, realizing we'd never discussed this. We'd been so focused on everything else. Safety, logistics, the complicated reality of co-parenting, that we'd never talked about what we'd call our daughter. "Iris," I said softly, the name coming to me fully formed, feeling right in a way few things had lately. For new beginnings and hope after storms. "Iris," Dominic repeated, testing the name. His eyes were bright with unshed tears, his usual composure completely shattered by the tiny being we'd created. "It's perfect. She's perfect." "Elena, thank you. Thank you for her. For this. For—" "Don't," I interrupted gently, too exhausted for heavy emotion. "Just be here. With us. That's enough." Dr. Winters finished her work and stepped back, giving us space. "I'll be back in an hour to check on you both. Father, you should do skin-to-skin contact once Mother is done. It helps with bonding." She left, and it was just the three of us. Me, Dominic, and Iris, the daughter who had just irrevocably changed everything. I looked at her perfect little face, at the way her tiny hand had wrapped around Dominic's finger, and felt the future stretching out before us, uncertain and terrifying and full of possibility. "Elena," Dominic said quietly, his voice thick. "I know you said there's no us anymore, and I understand why. I do, but looking at her, holding her, I can't imagine my life without either of you in it. However you'll let me be part of this, whatever you need from me, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. Not ever again." I wanted to guard my heart, to maintain the walls I'd built so carefully. But Iris was already breaking them down, this tiny being who connected us in ways that transcended hurt and history and everything that had come before. "One day at a time," I whispered. "That's all I can promise right now. We figure this out one day at a time." "One day at a time," he agreed, his eyes never leaving our daughter's face. "I can work with that." Outside, dawn was breaking over the territory, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. A new day, a new beginning. And despite everything, despite the pain and the fear and the uncertainty that still lay ahead, I felt something unfurl in my chest that I'd thought long dead. Hope. 3 months had transformed everything and nothing at all. Iris lay in her bassinet near the window, making the small snuffling sounds that meant she'd wake soon for her afternoon feeding. Sunlight caught the pale blonde fuzz on her head, my coloring, though her eyes had darkened to the same ice blue as her father's. She was growing fast, already outgrowing the newborn clothes I'd carefully folded just weeks ago, already developing a personality that was equal parts stubborn determination and surprising gentleness. I stood at the kitchen counter, preparing a bottle even though I'd been nursing. Dr. Winters had suggested supplementing. Iris had my appetite and Dominic's metabolism, a combination that meant she was constantly hungry. The cottage had become a home in these months, filled with the detritus of new parenthood. Blankets draped over furniture, a changing station in the corner, toys that Iris was still too young for but that Dominic kept bringing anyway. He'd been true to his word. Every single day for 3 months he'd shown up, sometimes early morning, sometimes late evening, always careful to call first, to respect boundaries, to never assume more than I was willing to give. He'd learned to change diapers, to soothe Iris when she cried, to handle her with a confidence that had replaced his initial terror. Watching him with our daughter did dangerous things to my carefully maintained emotional distance. The knock came at precisely 2 o'clock, as it had every day this week. Dominic's schedule was nothing if not consistent. I opened the door to find him holding not his usual offering of food or supplies, but an envelope, his expression grave. "What's wrong?" I asked immediately, stepping aside to let him in. "We need to talk." He glanced at Iris, still sleeping peacefully. "Is she?" "She'll sleep another 20 minutes. Dominic, what happened?" He handed me the envelope. Inside was a formal document, ornate script on heavy paper that I recognized immediately as official PAC correspondence. My eyes scanned the text, my stomach sinking with each line. Petition to the Alpha King regarding the status and legitimacy of the heir apparent, Iris Blackthorne. Submitted by Council Elder Raymond Thorne and seconded by... The list of names went on, nearly a third of the PAC Council. "They're challenging her legitimacy," I said numbly, because we were divorced when she was born. Technically, yes, Dominic's jaw was tight with barely contained rage. They're arguing that since we weren't bonded at the time of her birth, she can't be considered the true heir, that any claim to succession is invalid. But you're her father. DNA doesn't lie. PAC law is complicated. Legitimacy isn't just about blood. It's about the circumstances of birth, the status of the parents, the recognition of the bond. He took the document back, his hands clenching around it. "They're using this as leverage. Raymond has been positioning his daughter as a potential Luna since you left. This is his move to solidify that." I felt cold despite the summer warmth. "What does this mean for Iris?" "It means they want to strip her of her birthright, declare her illegitimate, remove her from succession entirely." His voice dropped to something dangerous. "Over my dead body," a small cry came from the bassinet. Iris was waking, her tiny fists waving as she transitioned from sleep to wakefulness. I went to her automatically, lifting her warm weight against my chest, breathing in her perfect baby scent. She nuzzled against me, rooting for food, oblivious to the political machinations that threatened her future. "There's a solution," Dominic said quietly, "one that would make all of this disappear." I looked at him over our daughter's head, already knowing what he was going to say. "We remarry. Formally bond again, with the full PAC as witnesses. It would legitimize Iris retroactively, silence the council's objections, and solidify the succession." He met my eyes. "I know what I'm asking, Elena. I know what I'm asking you to give up. Your independence, your peace, your carefully rebuilt life. But I'm asking anyway, because it's the only way to protect her." Iris had found my breast and was nursing contentedly, her small hand resting against my skin in complete trust. I looked down at her, this perfect being we'd created, and felt the weight of impossible choices settling on my shoulders. "You could fight them," I said. "As Alpha King, you have the authority to override the council." I could, but it would split the PAC, potentially trigger a civil war, and it wouldn't change the whispers, the questions about her legitimacy that would follow her for the rest of her life. He came closer, careful not to crowd us but near enough that I could see the desperation in his eyes. "I'm not asking you to do this for me, Elena. I'm asking you to do it for her. So she grows up knowing her place is unquestioned, her right to lead undisputed." "And what about my place?" The question came out sharper than I intended. "If I agree to this, what am I to you? A political necessity? A means to an end? You're the woman I fell in love with." The words were raw, unguarded. The woman I was too stupid to fight for the first time around. The woman who gave me the greatest gift I've ever received and asked for nothing in return. "You're the mother of my daughter, and the only person who's ever made me want to be better than I am." Pretty words, Dominic. But we tried this once before. It didn't work. Because I didn't work at it. Because I let outside pressure dictate our relationship instead of protecting what we had. He knelt in front of the chair where I sat nursing Iris, putting himself at eye level with me. "I'm not asking you to trust that I've changed. I'm asking you to let me prove it, every day, for the rest of our lives. And if you can't do it for us, then do it for her. She deserves to know both her parents, together, not separated by politics and past mistakes. Iris had finished nursing and was drowsing against me, milk-drunk and peaceful. I looked at her perfect face, at the life she'd have if I agreed to this. Secure, protected, acknowledged. And the life she'd have if I refused. Always questioned, always fighting for recognition, always bearing the consequences of choices her parents made. I need conditions, I said finally. Hope flared in Dominic's eyes. Anything. We do this as partners, equal say in PAC decisions, especially anything involving Iris. No more councils dictating our lives. Agreed. I want Cole as my personal guard and advisor, someone I trust watching my back. Done. He'd insist on it anyway, and we take this slow. The bonding ceremony can be formal, for the PAC, but the rest, the marriage, the relationship, we build that at my pace. No rushing, no assumptions, no expectations. Elena, I would wait a lifetime if that's what you needed. His hand reached up tentatively, and I didn't pull away when he touched Iris's head gently. Thank you. I swear to you, I will spend every day proving I deserve this second chance. The bonding ceremony was held 1 week later under a full moon. The entire PAC gathered in the ceremonial grounds that I'd last seen on my wedding day 3.5 years ago. But where that first ceremony had been stiff and political, weighted with expectations I could never meet, this one felt different, raw, real. I wore a simple white dress, not the ornate gown from before. Iris was strapped to my chest in a wrap, sleeping peacefully against my heart, while Cole stood at my side as my chosen second. The PAC watched with a mixture of curiosity and approval. I'd been surprised by how many had quietly supported my return, had whispered that the PAC had felt wrong without Eluna, that Dominic had been incomplete without me. Dominic stood across from me in traditional ceremonial robes, his eyes never leaving mine as Elder Winters, the only council member who'd actively opposed the legitimacy challenge, began the ancient bonding rites. Before the moon and the PAC, before the ancestors and the land, we gather to witness the bonding of Alpha and Luna, the joining of souls that will lead us forward. Her voice carried across the silent grounds. Dominic Blackthorne, Alpha King of the Northern Territories. Do you claim Elena Morrison as your mate, your partner, your equal in all things? I do. His voice was steady, but I could see his hands trembling slightly. I claim her as my mate, my Luna, the other half of my soul. I swear to protect her, honor her, stand beside her in all things until my last breath. Elena Morrison, do you accept this claim? Do you bind yourself to Dominic Blackthorne, to lead beside him, to strengthen the PAC with your presence? I looked at Dominic, at the man who'd broken my heart and was now offering me everything to repair it. I thought about Iris, about the life we could build for her, about second chances and choosing courage over fear. I do, I said clearly. I accept his claim and offer my own. I bind myself to him as his equal, his partner, his Luna. Together we will lead, together we will protect, together we will build a future for our daughter and our PAC. Elder Winters smiled, something almost motherly in her expression. Then, by the authority vested in me and witnessed by the PAC, I declare you bonded, Alpha and Luna, joined as one. Dominic closed the distance between us carefully, mindful of Iris still sleeping against my chest. His hands cupped my face gently, giving me every opportunity to pull away. I didn't. When his lips met mine, the bond that had been damaged but never fully broken flared to life, golden and warm and right. The PAC howled their approval, the sound echoing across the territory. And I felt for the first time since I'd left that I was truly home. The reception afterward was subdued by PAC standards. Iris was still too young for the usual revelry, and I was too exhausted for politics. But as I sat in the place of honor beside Dominic, our daughter finally awake and being passed carefully between PAC members who cooed over her, I felt something settle inside me. Cole appeared at my elbow with sparkling cider. Alcohol was still off limits while I was nursing. How are you holding up, Luna? Strange, hearing that title again. Strange good or strange bad? I watched Dominic across the room. Saw him gently take Iris from Elder Raymond's daughter. the same one who'd been positioned as his potential Luna, and the way his entire face softened as he looked at our daughter. Strange hopeful, I admitted. Is that foolish? Not foolish. Brave. Cole took a sip of his own drink. For what it's worth, I've known Dominic my entire life. I've never seen him like this. Focused, determined, genuinely trying to be better. You and Iris, you've changed something fundamental in him. People don't really change, Cole. Maybe not, but they can choose to grow, and he's choosing it. Every day. That has to count for something. Before I could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. 3 wolves I didn't recognize entered, their travel-worn clothes and aggressive postures immediately setting off alarm bells. The celebration died down as Dominic handed Iris quickly to Elder Winters and moved to intercept them. State your business, he said, his voice cold with alpha command. The lead wolf, a scarred man with gray streaking his temples, bared his teeth in what might have been a smile. We come with a message from the Rogue Coalition. Your territories are no longer safe. Your pack is weak. Surrender now, and we'll let most of your people live. Resist. His eyes found me across the room, lingering on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. And we'll take everything you love and make you watch it burn. The threat hung in the air like poison. I watched Dominic's entire body go rigid, watched the Alpha King emerge fully. All traces of the gentle father vanished beneath cold fury. You come into my territory during a bonding ceremony and threaten my Luna. His voice dropped to something dangerous. You have 10 seconds to leave before I paint these walls with your blood. The rogues laughed, but it was brittle. They'd underestimated him, expected the weakened alpha they'd heard rumors about. They hadn't counted on what a man with everything to lose could become. We're leaving, the lead rogue said, but his eyes stayed on me. But we'll be back, and next time, we're not asking permission. They left, and the celebration was effectively over. Pack members began filing out, muttering among themselves about security and defenses. Dominic crossed immediately to where I stood with Iris now back in my arms, his hands gentle even as his eyes blazed with protective fury. We need to increase security around your cottage, he said. Triple the guard, set up perimeter alarms, or, I interrupted quietly, we could stop pretending we're separate, move into the pack house properly, present a united front instead of this half measure we've been doing. He stared at me. Elena, I don't want you to feel pressured. I'm not. I'm being practical. If the rogues are mobilizing, if they're targeting me specifically, then hiding in a cottage on the border is stupid. We're bonded now. We have a daughter to protect. It's time to stop letting fear dictate our choices. A slow smile spread across Dominic's face, the first genuine one I'd seen all evening. Are you sure? I looked at Iris, then at him, then at the pack house visible through the windows, imposing and political and everything I'd run from, but also, potentially, everything I could help reshape into something better. I'm sure. Besides, Iris needs to grow up knowing her home, her pack, her place in all of this. Can't do that from a cottage. That night, after Iris was settled in the nursery that had been prepared in the Alpha's quarters, after the security measures were increased and the Pack Council briefed on the rogue threat, I stood on the balcony overlooking the territory and felt the weight of my choices settling into something like peace. Dominic came to stand beside me, careful to maintain space, still honoring my request for slowness. Regrets? He asked quietly. Ask me in a year. Fair enough. He was quiet for a moment. Elena, I know I keep saying this, but I need you to hear it. What happened before? The divorce, the rejection, all of it. It was the worst mistake of my life. Not a day goes by that I don't think about what I put you through, what I made you endure alone. If I could go back, but you can't. I interrupted gently. None of us can. We can only move forward, choose better, be better. For her, if not for ourselves. For all of us. Elena, he corrected softly. I'm choosing better for all of us. You, me, Iris, we're a family now. And I will protect that with everything I have. Inside, Iris began to cry. The specific wail that meant she was hungry again. I moved to go to her, but Dominic's hand on my arm stopped me. Let me, he said. I'll bring her to you. You rest for just a moment more. I watched him go. This man who'd been a stranger and a husband and a heartbreak and was now, tentatively, becoming a partner. The future stretched out uncertain before us. Rogue threats and pack politics and all the complications of two broken people trying to build something whole. But as I stood there under the moon that had witnessed both our first bonding and our second, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself in nearly a year. Not just hope, but belief. Belief that we could make this work. That Iris would grow up knowing both her parents loved her, loved each other, would move mountains to protect their family, that the mistakes of the past didn't have to define the possibilities of the future. Dominic returned with our daughter, and I took her, settled into the rocking chair that had been placed by the window. As Iris nursed and Dominic sat nearby, reading through security reports but always with one eye on us, I realized something fundamental had shifted. I wasn't the rejected Luna anymore, running from pain and rejection. I was Elena Blackthorne, mother, partner, Luna, not because someone gave me the title, but because I claimed it myself. I was the woman who'd survived abandonment and built a life from nothing, and come back not as a victim, but as someone who knew her own worth. The rogues would come. The council would continue their machinations. There would be challenges and threats and moments when I'd question everything all over again. But tonight, with my daughter in my arms and her father beside me, and the pack's heartbeat thrumming through the bond that connected us all, I felt ready. Ready for whatever came next, because this time, I wasn't facing it alone. This time, I had everything I needed to not just survive, but to thrive. And our daughter, strong, perfect Iris, she would grow up knowing that her mother had been knocked down and gotten back up, that her father had made mistakes, but learned from them. That love, real love, wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing each other, again and again, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. 6 months later, the territory was more secure than it had been in years. The rogue threat had been neutralized. A combination of strategic alliances, shows of force, and Cole's brilliant intelligence work had dismantled the coalition before they could launch their planned attack. The pack was stable, unified under leadership that had proven its strength not through dominance but through genuine partnership. And me? I'd found my place, not as someone's rejected wife or someone's political pawn, but as myself. Luna Elena, who brought a different kind of strength to leadership, who mediated disputes with empathy, who advocated for the weaker pack members, who proved that power came in many forms. Iris was 9 months old now, crawling everywhere and getting into everything. Her laughter the soundtrack to our days. She had Dominic wrapped completely around her tiny finger, and watching them together, seeing him on the floor playing with building blocks, or reading her stories in silly voices, or just holding her while she slept, had slowly, carefully, allowed my heart to heal. We still took things slowly, Dominic and I, still rebuilding trust one day at a time. But there were moments now, stolen kisses in the hallway, hands finding each other across the dinner table, the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't watching, that felt like falling in love again. Or maybe for the first time, properly, without all the political pressure and expectations that had suffocated us before. "What are you thinking about?" Dominic asked one evening as we watched Iris play on a blanket in our quarters, surrounded by more toys than any child needed. How different everything is from a year ago. How I thought my life was ending, and instead it was just beginning. He reached over, taking my hand. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for giving me this chance, for trusting me with both of you. I know I didn't earn it. You're earning it now, every day." I squeezed his hand. "That's what matters." Iris chose that moment to tumble over, landing on her bottom with a surprised expression that quickly crumpled toward tears. We both moved instinctively, but I got there first, scooping her up and kissing her forehead as she whimpered against my shoulder. "You're okay, baby girl," I murmured. "Just a little tumble. You're so brave." She sniffled, then caught sight of her father and reached for him with grabbing hands. Dominic took her gently, and she settled immediately, her head on his shoulder, thumb in her mouth. The trust she had in both of us, the security of knowing we'd always be there, it was everything I'd hoped to give her. "She's going to rule this pack someday," Dominic said softly, awe in his voice. "And she's going to be extraordinary, just like her mother." I stood, moving to stand beside them. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I let myself fully embrace this moment. This family. This life we'd built from the broken pieces of what came before. It wasn't perfect. There were still challenges ahead, still wounds that ached on bad days. But it was real, honest, worth fighting for. And as I stood there with my daughter and the man I was learning to love again, I realized that sometimes the story doesn't end where you think it will. Sometimes you have to fall apart completely before you can build something stronger. Sometimes the greatest strength is in choosing to try again, even when every part of you wants to protect itself by staying closed. This was our new beginning, hard-won, complicated, more beautiful than anything I could have imagined when I stepped on that bus, 9 months pregnant and running from heartbreak. This was home. This was family. This was love that had been tested and broken and carefully, patiently rebuilt into something that could withstand anything, and it was enough. More than enough. It was everything.